So in the first edition of this little series, we were just looking at the ephemeris. So now you should have the ephemeris in your possession, and you should know how to be able to read it and the degrees and the signs and the planets and what we're actually going to focus on. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty, and we're going to start to make some selections from our dates. So let's have a closer look. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be eliminating some of the less beneficial dates to get married on. Now, the first set of dates we're going to be looking for are the times when Mercury is retrograde. Then we're going to be looking at Venus retrograde and Mars retrograde. Now, the reason being is, I think, and you may have observed this in your own life, you might not have done, but there's lots of, I guess, rumors, but also evidence, like experience that people report upon, saying that, when Mercury's retrograde, they experience difficulties and delays in paperwork and legal things, and getting things delivered on time, arriving on time, all sorts of things to do with the delivery, and contractual work between people seems to go awry. Given that at the time of a wedding, it's an agreement and it's kind of like a legally binding agreement whereby usually somebody changes their name and there's lots of guests coming, etc., etc. You probably want to keep it as smooth as possible. So Mercury retrograde dates are usually eliminated. Now, I would say, if you've got Mercury retrograde in your own chart, and you find that energy quite easy, then this may not be so applicable to you. But if your Mercury isn't retrograde, and in fact you are very sort of, maybe you're impatient, maybe you're a perfectionist, maybe you just don't like being at the hands of fate so much, then I would consider eliminating the Mercury retrograde dates. Venus retrograde tends to be a time when old lovers pop up and we start to question our loving connections. We're right in the middle of the Venus retrograde right now, and they come around every 18 months. They normally knock us for six a little bit. So it's usually prudent. Again, if you've got Venus retrograde and it's part of your coding, you might find it a bit easier to work with. But for most people, eliminating Venus retrograde is probably very useful. Same goes for Mars retrograde. I mean, Mars has something to do with passion and virility, also fertility, I would say, and health. And so in terms of the marriage, you want to have a marriage date where it feels like everyone is, I guess, in full health, in full vitality. When Mars is retrograde, we can often find our willpower a bit stymied. And of course, if we're holding back in any way, shape or form, it's going to burst forth at an inopportune moment. So it's worth getting the energies really, really balanced. So the first things we're going to do is just knock these dates off our list. And I'll show you how to do it. It's really, really straightforward. And once you've done that, that's the first real big step. The next thing we're going to do, and I'm going to do it in the next session, we're going to be looking for the times when Venus is not very strong, when the moon is not very strong, and when Mercury is not very strong. And we're going to knock those dates out. So what you can see straight off with these 4 months of dates, I'm going to be making, like eliminating all the dates we don't want. And so let's do this now in real time. So I've got a calendar here with all the different dates that I'll be looking at. It's quite a lot. So the first thing I'm going to do is eliminate all the Mercury retrogrades. So here's my calendar, and I identify Mercury. And in November, you can see that Mercury is gaining, like it's moving forwards. It starts at 15 degrees, and it's 17, 18, 20 degrees, 21, 23. Then at 29 degrees in Scorpio, the next day it's at 1 degree in the sign of Sagittarius, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't go retrograde here. But then when we go into December, you'll see it starts in the sign of Sagittarius, then it moves into the sign of Capricorn. And then on the 13th of December, you'll see it's got a little R next to it. It changes and it appears to go retrograde. It appears to go backwards. So if you see, it's at it goes retrograde at 8 degrees 29, And then the numbers start getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it goes back into the previous sign of Sagittarius. So all of these dates are going to be eliminated. And then we go into January, and then you'll see at 22 degrees 11, it's got a D next to it, which is showing that it's going direct again. And then it's moving forwards. So we identify the retrograde. And then in February, there's no Mercury retrograde. So the first thing you're going to do is essentially wipe out all these dates on your calendar. So that's the first one. We can tick that off. Then we're going to do the same for Venus. So, and also Mars. Now, as it happens, there's no retrograde there or there in February. Or in January, or in December, or in November. So we know they're clear. In fact, Mars goes retrograde very infrequently. So that's not a bother for us. So we've done Mercury, we've done Venus, and we've done Mars. Now, there is another thing that we want to... so these are our beneficial dates so far, are all these ones in white, but they are going to get eliminated quite rapidly. The next thing we're going to do in terms of eliminating dates is to highlight dates when there is a sign change. Now, we're not eliminating them, but we're highlighting them because there might be a maybe date. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's have a look. So in November, for instance, the first sign change for one of the big planets, I'm not considering the moon because that changes signs every day, every couple of days. But you'll see here Venus is in the sign of Virgo, and then she's in the sign of Libra. Now, this goes from midnight. So on Thursday, the 9th of November, as you're going into the 9th of November, she's already in the sign of Libra. So she actually changes signs on the 8th of November. So that's one of those days where her energy is a little unstable. So I've put all these unstable days in amber, and you'll see the next one is with Mercury changing from the sign of Scorpio and into the sign of Sagittarius. Then we've also got the Sun moving from the sign of Scorpio and into the sign of Sagittarius. And then Mars changes signs as well on the 24th, goes from the sign of Scorpio and into the sign of Sagittarius. There's 4 unstable dates there. And then December, you'll see there's the retrograde that I've already identified. And they're the unstable dates. So I can now add these in, which I've already done. So that's the first real step in terms of eliminating the dates for, to find your perfect date. And if you get this right at the start, these are the most important ones to knock out first of all. The rest of them are more preference. So in the next episode, we're going to be looking at eliminating times when Venus is not strong, eliminating times when the moon is not strong, and when Mercury is not strong. So see you in the next session.